So now we are in season 2, episode 4 of Strange New Worlds. The episode's called Among the Lotus Eaters. And this episode is actually a reference to an event that was brought up in the original pilot for Star Trek, The Cage. The one that didn't actually air until the 80s, because the studio told them to do a second pilot and recast everyone. But The Cage, the original pilot, that's where we got Pike and Number One. And in that episode, Pike's wanting to hang up his hat. He wants to retire or quit Starfleet and do something else because he's just had a mission where he lost 3 crew members and it's weighing heavily on him. And this episode is them going back to that planet, Rigel 7, where he lost those 3 crew members. So we actually get to find out more of what happened there. This is kind of a split episode. It's very Pike-centric, but it's also very Ortegas-centric. As I've mentioned before, Ortegas, the pilot of the ship, she's kind of my favorite character, and she really isn't given much to do in the show. She's never been given a focal episode. And this episode even starts out like you're thinking it's going to be her episode, because she has a personal log where she's like, because I'm the pilot of the ship, I usually don't get to go out on away missions, but we can't beam down to this one planet because of atmospheric interference, and there's got to be some fancy flying with the shuttle to get down there, so I get to go, and I'm all excited. And then Spock shows up and is just like, sorry, but it looks like there's a pretty bad asteroid field around this planet that we're going to need you to correct course every 20 minutes, so you don't get to have this episode. And when Spock does that, she's you can see how deflated she is, because she's already gotten dressed up, dressing like one of the locals on the planet so that she can blend in. And she's just like Spock, is like, it was logical of me to bring up this, and she's like, Spock, just sometimes know when to shut up. But the main plot of this episode is that Rigel 7, it's a planet that was like a Bronze Age society. They were only there last time, 5 years ago, for a couple of hours, and in that time, 3 of their crew died, and they had to just leave in a hurry. But they're coming back now because some aerial reconnaissance of the planet has shown that in one of their cities, there is a garden that has been drawn in the shape of the Starfleet Delta, which means there has been some cultural contamination from their prior visit, and they have to go and investigate what happened. So anyway, the Enterprise has to go back to that planet where Pike lost 3 of his crew because, they gotta clean up their mess, because in their hurry to leave, they must have left something behind that has influenced the local population, which is in violation of the Prime Directive, and they gotta, make sure that they don't influence them too much more. So Pike, M'Benga, and La'an go down to the surface, where they quickly discover that there's something wrong with the planet. They're all having migraines, and they have tinnitus, and they're starting to have fugue states where they're missing time and forgetting things. And they're quickly accosted by the locals, who are we know you're Starfleet. And so oh boy, the cover's blown. And they're taken to the local king, who, as it turns out, is one of the 3 members of their away team, one of the 3 that they thought was dead. They just left him for dead. And since then, he has become the local warlord in charge of everything, using his technology to build a life for himself. And he seems pretty resentful about, being left behind. He tells them that, he's gonna send them out, and they're gonna forget who they are, because something about this planet makes people forget. It destroys your ability to access your memories. People will still they'll still know how to do basic things. You can still talk, you can still instinctively know how to treat wounds if you're a doctor. You still know how to do your basic stuff, but you forget who you are. You forget your name, you forget what you were doing. And so very quickly, the away team, they're thrown in a cage, and then they just forget who they are. And then we find out that it's not just on the planet that they're having this issue. Uhura on the ship, she starts to exhibit symptoms as well, so they send her to sickbay, and then they find like a bunch of engineers are forgetting who they are and what they're doing. So like, okay, we got to get some distance between us and the planet. Let's go hide out in the asteroid field, which turns out to be the entirely wrong thing to do. As it turns out, there's some unknown element in those asteroids that's actually setting off radiation that is causing the memory inhibition. So when they go into the asteroid field, that just makes it worse. And so basically the entire crew is like forgetting who they are. And the reason that it's happening on the planet as well is because one of those asteroids had impacted the surface thousands of years ago. So, you know, everyone there is also just forgetting who they are. Pike and the others, they're, you know, just on the surface being treated like they're slave labor. Basically, they find out that there's like two kinds of Kalar, is the name of the species on the planet. There are the field Kalar and the palace Kalar. And the palace Kalar are quote-unquote burdened with memory. And you'll notice like all of like the guards are wearing these helmets, and the, you know, the palace apparently like the helmets and the palace are built with this kind of ore that shields against the radiation, so that those people are able to retain their memories. But everybody else, they're just set out in the fields and they're just forced to do menial labor because, you know, you don't need your memories to do that, and they're told that it's, you know, it's bliss not to remember your pain, so that you can just go about, you know, live in the moment. There's like a character that they meet called Luke, who he's, you know, obviously been doing this for a long time, and he's bought in all of the, you know, stories about oh yeah, no, it's better not to remember your pain, it's better just to live in the moment. But he also like kind of tells them things like he basically helps the away team understand the ins and outs of what you can remember and what you can't, and like emotions, they don't go away. When Pike is just like, look, we have to have our memories back. La'an is actually injured when they fight off a couple of the guards, and she's gonna bleed out without medical assistance. And M'Benga is able to put pressure on the wound and stuff, but without his memories, he doesn't know the advanced techniques to, like, you know, stitch her back up or keep her from dying. And so Pike's just like, no, these are my friends and I gotta help them. I gotta go and get my memories back. And the rumor is that all the memories are stored in like a chest in the palace, when it turns out it's actually just an ore in the palace, and the chest is just like a Starfleet crate full of materials that the one guy that was left behind has been using. While Pike is going through that and, you know, following his emotions, because those are like his the character Luke says, you are guided by your emotions, they are your truth, and I find them convincing. Because originally Luke doesn't want to help them. He's just like, no, you don't need your memories. But once he sees the conviction that Pike has, where he's like, no, we don't belong here and we need our memories, that's when he helps them. And on the Enterprise, Ortegas has a similar crisis of identity, because she quickly forgets who she is, and like she's like kind of panics and runs away from her console, and just is like asking the ship's computer who she is and where is home, and the ship just tells her how to get to her quarters. When she gets to her quarters, she looks out the window and sees all the asteroids, and some of them start hitting the ship, and she's just like, she tells the computer, get me away from the rocks, and the computer is like, would you like me to set a course? And she's like, set a course? Wait, that sounds familiar. What, computer, what does it mean? Who am I? He's like, you are Erica Ortegas. You are the pilot of the ship. She's like, I am Erica Ortegas. I fly the ship. And that just, she basically keeps saying that. And so she runs back to the bridge, and she's able to remember how to fly the ship, because she's so good at it. It's basically instinctual memory. She saves the day there, so she gets kind of half of a focal episode. And once Pike gets into the palace and confronts the king, who was you know, one of his officers that he left behind, he regains his memories and is able to convince the guy who's like, come on, man, I'm here, take you home. Starfleet will obviously have to deal with whatever it is you've been doing on the planet, but it's time to go home. And so they once they're back on the ship, Spock is able to adjust their shields to protect them from the radiation, and they pull the asteroid away from the planet so that people on the surface no longer have the memory loss issues. We don't know what happens to the culture after that once they regain their memories, but Luke, who up till that point had been saying, like, he knew that he had a family, because he had tattoos of like important stuff, but he also had like tattooed over like the information about his family. So he's like, I know I've lost them, but I don't know who they were, and I think it's better that way. But then once he's in the palace and he regains his memories, he starts crying. He's like, I had a son, and he's like, I was wrong. It was so important to know him. It was so important to remember him. And I actually really like the character Luke. He nice, just gentle, kind actor character. I think this was a really, really fun episode. And yeah, I am Erica Ortegas. I fly the ship. That's like, I was seeing people like tweeting that or skeeting that on Blue Sky, because that's where I've been posting most of these days. Somebody created a Star Trek feed on Blue Sky, because Blue Sky lets you make your own custom algorithms, basically. And so that's where I've been hanging out and talking to other people about Star Trek, and I saw multiple skeets saying, I am Erica Ortegas, I fly the ship. I think this is a really great episode. It feels like just very classic Trek. You run into a specific problem and you see how people try and solve it. And there was actually a very similar episode of The Next Generation called Conundrum. I think that's the name of the episode. Let me look it up here. So Conundrum was an episode of The Next Generation where some like energy thing hits the Enterprise, and everybody on the Enterprise forgets who they are. They still know how to run the ship, but they are just like, it's like blank slate. Everybody is set back to zero. They don't know who each other are. They don't know the relationships. They still have like their emotional vibes on things, but it's just interesting to see how the crew puts things together when they don't know who they are. And it's a very similar episode to that. But yeah, this episode, this was actually a really good episode of TNG, and it is a very similar episode. I think it plays out a little differently, because in Conundrum, it's more about like, you know, like a what happens if you take these characters, but then none of them know each other or who they are, and see how they work it out. Whereas in this episode of Strange New Worlds, it's far more of an emotional, like, what happens when you start to lose your identity kind of a thing. And then there was one more thing that I wanted to talk about, and that is Captain Battelle. Captain Battelle and Pike have been on kind of a long-term or a long-distance relationship, very long distance since it's space, but they're both starship captains. And basically anytime their ships, she's the captain of the Cayuga. Anytime they're, you know, working together, like he makes food for them in his quarters, and they're only able to get maybe 30 minutes here or 10 minutes there because they're both captains, they're busy. But I kind of feel like the show doesn't really know what her job actually is, because she's supposed to be the captain of a starship, but she was also the JAG officer who was prosecuting Una two weeks ago. I could understand if like you were out in the middle of nowhere and like these were the only captain ranked officers and you needed to do like a field court martial, but like that episode was set in San Francisco, so like you had Starfleet JAG just set right there, but this captain of a starship is also just being a prosecutor. So like I don't know what they were going for with her, but she's in this episode. And actually, like Pike, at the beginning of the episode, Pike's noticing how hard it is for them to date, and even suggests that they take a break because they're only able to steal away little moments here and there, and it's not really working. And she seems pretty upset about that, and part of the plot of the episode is him realizing that he still has an emotional connection to her, even when he doesn't remember who she is. Even when he doesn't see her, he just has like a little trinket gift that she had given him, and that he's wearing around his neck, and he uses that to be like, this is somebody who's important to me who I recently hurt. And so by the end of the episode, he, you know, apologizes and is like, yeah, I was being dumb and I was pushing you away because things were getting serious and I was getting scared. So I imagine we'll be seeing more of Battelle, but I hope that the show like solidifies on what her job is, because it doesn't make sense that she's both a starship captain and a JAG officer, you know? That's I think that's it for the reviews for this week. Strange New Worlds, great show. It's on Paramount Plus, but I don't actually recommend that people subscribe to Paramount Plus these days, because they pulled Star Trek Prodigy from the service so that they could do it as a tax write-off. So I am not happy with Paramount Plus, and I don't want to use my platform to recommend that people use that service. So take that for what you will. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. Hey, thanks for watching. I'm trying to get my channel monetized, so your view means a lot. Don't forget to toss me a like and subscribe and ring the bell. I stream these reviews every Thursday at 7 p.m. Pacific, so catch me live and join in on the convo. You can find all my socials in the description below, and thank you to all my patrons with a special shout out to pfftlecakes. Your support means the world. Catch you next time.